I'm Mars, and welcome to the Joy of Diversity. Each video, we choose a different color from the pride flag to paint, and this episode's color is yellow, which stands for sunshine in the traditional meanings. So on the theme of sunshine and yellow, it really brought me to think of joy. So, since the theme is joy and yellow and sunshine, I decided that the best thing to paint would be the yellow house. And if you didn't know, the Joy of Diversity is run through the yellow house as part of our asynchronous programming. That way anyone can have a chance to interact with our programming, no matter how busy your schedule is, no matter if you can come in person, if you're immunocompromised, you have accessibility needs, anything like that. This is just so that you can do it on your own time as you want. So I'm actually going to paint like the literal building, the yellow house, but as always, you're free to paint whatever you'd like. So let's get started. If you're using our kits, or if you're painting from whatever you have at home, this is what you'll need. You should have 1 tin of watercolor. Mine's messy as usual, but to combat the messiness, some sort of surface for mixing the paint. You can either use your tin, mine's dirty, so I'll use a yogurt lid, some masking tape, painter's tape. It can be any color painter's tape, but it actually can't be masking tape because masking tape rips the paper. But painter's tape is sticky, but not so sticky that it actually rips. And then some watercolor paper, of course, to paint on, some sort of pencil, some sort of line art pen, a few paintbrushes, and some sort of eraser. This is a kneaded eraser, which I find is easier for watercolor, and you'll see why in a little bit, but any eraser will do. And of course, some water. It helps if you have 2 waters, one for clean water, one for dirty water, so one to pick up water in and one to rinse your paintbrushes off in. Sometimes I forget, and normally I can make do, but it's just best to have 2. So I have another glass on standby. And it's also helpful to change out your water. I typically don't, just because, it's a long walk to the kitchen, 3 meters, much too much. Anyways, let's get started. Our first step is taping everything down. So I'm gonna record the taping down, and we'll be back. So there's a few reasons why we tape down our watercolor paper. 1, so that it stays in place, which is easier to work with. 2, so that it doesn't warp or wrinkle as you're painting, because as the water saturates the paper, it can sometimes cause it to wrinkle. I don't know if you've ever noticed that problem, but the best way to combat that is by taping it down. And then lastly, so we get these like really cool crisp edges. I mean, I'm personally a fan of them. If you don't like them, you can always untape your paper afterwards and either cut to length or like cut out your paper or add some watercolor to the edges. And then it's always best to get as even as you can. I'm really lucky because I have this handy dandy grid, but just try and eyeball it, try and make sure it's straight, try and make sure all the strips have an even length around. And worst case scenario, if it's not even, you can always trim at the end. Oh, I forgot to mention the best part. The most satisfying part about painting is peeling the tape off afterwards. So really, that's the best part of doing it. And make sure everything is down even. Make sure you get rid of any cat hair that gets on there. And I'll keep taping everything down. Okay, so now that everything's taped down, we're gonna start sketching. It's always handy to have a sketch of what you want to do on hand. That way you kind of, one, have practiced it, but then also you're not just like staring at a blank page like, oh no, what am I gonna do? You already kind of know what you're gonna do. So this is my like rough sketch. I'm probably not gonna get this much detail with such a small painting, so I'm gonna have to cut out a lot of the detail, and I want to fix some of the proportions, but this is basically what I'm gonna be doing. It's the yellow house and this little sunset, because you know, sunshine, joy. All that good stuff. As we're sketching, we want to make really, really light pencil marks. Like, you barely want to touch the paper, because later on we're actually going to be erasing what we draw. Not completely, don't worry, your hard work's not going to go away, but we do it so that the watercolor doesn't pick up any of the graphite that you leave on the paper. So the less on the paper, the better. And the less detail you can get away with putting on the paper, the better. But personally, I need more detail to see what I'm doing. But if you can do it with just like a basic sketch, that's perfect as well. Okay, just because I'm doing a pretty detailed sketch, I'm going to be using a ruler and everything like that, you probably don't want to hear me smack down this ruler a bajillion times. I'm just going to do a quick time lapse of the sketch, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now that we have the sketch done, we're gonna move on to my favorite part, painting. So with watercolor, the typical thing to do is take some water just from whatever source you're using and put a little bit on each thing you're planning on using. So for me, obviously I'm gonna be using a lot of yellow. So you just wet the color, let it soak in for a second, mix it up, and then you can either use it straight from the pan or you can put it onto whichever surface you're mixing. And the longer you let it sit in, like you could leave it from like anywhere from a couple seconds to like a minute, the more pigment it's going to pick up and soften in the pan. So for me, obviously, because I'm going to be using a lot of yellow, I'm going to put a lot of water in here and let it soak up. But see, since I've only done it for a little bit, it's there, but it's not the most opaque. Could definitely be like thicker. But I'm just going to pick up some of the yellow, and you can always water it down on your mixing surface too. So I'm just going to grab some clean water and probably use a little bit of green and probably a little bit of orange and brown and black. With watercolor too, it's important to do light washes first, or well, that's at least what I like to do, and then build up color from there. Some people like to do the opposite, but this is just what I happen to do. So I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow. I'm gonna add a bunch of water. Just do a light wash with it. And it looks dark, but it will dry a little bit lighter, especially if you spread it out like I am. Oh, shoot. Oh no. Okay, so as Bob Ross says, there's no mistakes, just happy accidents, and well, yeah, I had a little, yeah, made a little mistake there. So I forgot to erase before putting watercolor on, and here's why we erase. You see that? That's because the water got onto the graphite that was on the top of this. So anytime we have a sketch, we want to lightly erase all of the different lines that we're gonna like erase all the lines that we don't need, such as this, like these marks. But then once we have our basic sketch down, we're also going to just lightly erase everything so that there's barely any graphite left on the page, and so it's harder for the watercolor to smudge it around like here. That's okay. At least this part of it is supposed to be gray anyways, so we're good in this case, but ooh, that scared me, that scared me. So I'm just gonna finish erasing this and then we'll be back. And if you have a regular eraser instead of a kneaded eraser, and obviously you can't roll with the regular one, you just want to do gentle little lines back and forth to try and pick it up. Now I erased quite heavily, so I'm actually gonna have to go back in some spots and just add back the detail that I took off. It can be hard to find a balance between what is erased enough and what's erased too much. But just as long as you can see what you're doing, you should be fine. But that's why it's also important to go lightly in the first place so that you're actually able to pick it up. Okay, I think that's enough. I can still kind of see what I'm doing, and hopefully it's enough so that I don't make any more smudges. And then we'll keep painting. Okay, so back to painting. I'm going to add water back in here, and I'm going to continue on with my wash of color. It's also nice to do a wash because then you can, like, if you make a little mistake while you're doing the wash, it's much easier to fix than with like a very pigmented color. And if you put too much water down, you can just take the water out of your brush and then put the dry brush back on the paper, and it picks it all up like that. Voila. If you make a mistake like I did just now, what I did was I took some water on my clean brush and I scrubbed the part that was a mistake, and then I just dabbed it with the tissue to pull up the pigment. That works best with lighter colors. If it's too dark of a mistake, sometimes not all of it will come up, but the sooner you do it after the mistake and the lighter that the mistake is, the easier it is to pull it back up. Okay, now that I've done a really light wash of all of the colors that I want, I'm going to go in and add more detail to each part. With watercolor, you want to work with negative space, especially when you have a lot of white in your painting. So in areas like this, the detail I'm adding isn't actually going to be with watercolor, but with the marker that I'm going to be using later. Just because it's so small, it would take me forever to add detail to it. I might try and add some shading to give it depth, but I'm not going to do anything too insanely detailed with watercolor in these parts. And that's why I left like this white. And then especially when you're blending blue to yellow, to avoid the green in between, or like to make green, you want to blend it in turns. So do a wash of blue, then do a wash of yellow, then do a wash of blue, and then try and minimally blend it in these areas. Yeah, so I'm just gonna get to adding more detail. So, now that we've painted for a little bit, I thought I'd go into our topic for today, which is the sun, joy, and community. I'm not really going to talk about the sun that much, because, unless you want some sun facts, which admittedly would be fun, but my main theme for today is joy and community. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Yellow House, it's a student center on Queen's campus directed at maintaining and promoting equity and inclusion. We have a whole range of programs and resources, from art nights to drag trivia to mental health support to advising. Throughout the year, we host a wide range of events under 9 main categories: well-being, Black Hat Queens, adulting, organizing for change and social justice, what a drag, joy in the community, academic success, fierce movement, and coffee houses. You can check out all of these programs in more in-depth descriptions at the Yellow House website. I'll probably link it in the description. It was recently revamped by Kai, or check out the new book list this year designed by Neza. Both of these folks work at our EDII programming branch at the Yellow House. So please do go check it out. The actual building the Yellow House resides in originally belonged to Jean Royce, the university's longest-serving registrar, and the founder of the Banry Foundation, among many other impressive accomplishments. The Yellow House we know today began when it was allocated as a student center, and the 4 clubs were chosen to move into the building. Shortly after, the center's director, Deanna, was hired, and full-time staff such as our sexual and gender diversity advisor, Kel, and our EDII coordinators, Tiana and Nathan, were also brought on. Every year since then, the Yellow House has grown, expanding and evolving our programming and reaching more and more students each year. This year, I've had the pleasure of helping decorate the 3rd floor of Rideau and transform it into a student programming space where everyone feels welcome. While choosing every decoration, every fabric pattern, I was reminded of all the joy the Yellow House has brought me, and many others. There's something special about 140 Stewart Street. When you walk in, the feeling of institution just melts away. The Yellow House for many, myself included, is a home away from home. A place to connect with community, with peers. It really pulls away from the academic rigor that we see in Queen's as an institution and allows for you to just be unconditionally, not dependent on grades, your social status, your social standing. It's really just a place where you can sit and connect and just be with others. Sure, academics play into it. You're always going to get asked what program you're in, but really it's just a place for people to connect and feel joy. Like, I truly do believe the Yellow House is a joy-building community. And it's that joy that's really important to center in your life. I feel it's important to take time to feel like the little joys that you come across in your day, especially. A small breeze when it's hot, the beautiful waterfront, a squirrel doing a weird pose. Lots of weird squirrels on campus, guys. Look out for them. University is tough. Sometimes it feels like there's too little time in the day to get everything you need to get done. Sometimes you just don't have the time to take off an afternoon for fun or hang out with friends. But you can take a second or two to soak in joy in whatever way you can. And I find it connects me to the bigger picture, that life isn't just school, isn't just work and chores, that life is full of connections, of little moments that make you who you are. It can be frustrating, whether you're doing dishes or, writing a paper and you just can't find the right words, or, walking to that 8 a.m. class. There are little moments where you can find joy, like when you pour dishwashing liquid into the sink and, those little bubbles pop up from the container. Like, that's so fun, What joy is that? Or like when you're writing a paper, I don't know how many of you guys do this, I do this all the time, and you misspell some words, and you get like a funny spelling. Like one time I wrote smart as snart. I swear, I was like laughing for like 15 minutes until I realized my paper was due in like an hour. Even just like, I've had 8 a.m. classes, but riding on the bus and seeing someone has like really cool shoes, but just in general, life is full of connections, of little moments that make you who you are. Even if it's as simple as borrowing a pen from a classmate or getting a donut from Timmy's, when you put emphasis on the small joys, it can disempower frustration. I mean, university especially can be lonely. I know a lot of first years are probably feeling that, or even for students who have pathways that differ in timelines from their friends, if you're taking an extra year to complete your degree, or your friend took a semester off and now you guys are mismatched, it can be difficult when you don't have that support system there. But it's nice to know that there's a space for you that'll accept you unconditionally on campus, and for me, that's the Yellow House. I've made great friends through the Yellow House, and I've seen countless other friendships formed as a facilitator. To me, life is really all about the connections you make along the way. Even if it's something small, like complimenting someone's shirt, or making understanding eye contact with another student when you're in a confusing lecture. We've all had that moment where like the lecture slide comes up, you look at it, and then you just kind of look down, and then you just kind of like Jim from The Office look at one of your classmates, and you just kind of give each other like a nod, like, what are we learning? I mean, you figure it out, but moments like that. But connections don't have to be these deep, meaningful, life-changing interactions and friendships. Sometimes when you find that life is being stingy with joy, you just have to create it yourself. So compliment that stranger's hair, even if they can't hear you with their headphones on. Take a moment to appreciate a weirdly shaped leaf on the ground, I don't know. Laugh at a stupid joke. Better yet, actually, make a stupid joke. I make those all the time. Yeah, it's not gonna solve your problems, but you know what? Can't hurt. Appreciating how far you've come and how lucky you are, even when you're feeling unlucky, is a valuable life skill that, trust me, is easier said than done. But, it's better to start looking for joy now than regret not appreciating your surroundings later. Okay, so now that everything is completely dry, we just want to erase any leftover lines. You can see how I have a few here and here. You just want to make sure there's no pencil left on the paper, because then we're going to add our marker. I might pause because it'll shake the camera too much. Okay, so now that it's dry and I've erased any sort of leftover graphite or pencil marks, now I can get to lining it. And you want to take your time, because this is the part where if you make a mistake, it's really hard to correct. So I didn't just want to talk about the joy I've found at university. So I reached out to other staff at the Yellow House and students to see what brought them joy on campus. One student said, "This is so run-of-the-mill, but being able to see and hang out with my friends on campus brings me joy. I agree. Another student said, oh, I love this, that 4 Directions brings me joy on campus. Having a place for cultural connection and identity to meet and socialize with others. It's so important, and it makes me happy that there's a place like that on campus. Aww. So, for those of you who may not know, 4 Directions is our Indigenous Student Center on campus. It's a wonderful center, and the Yell House was greatly inspired by the work they've done on Queen's campus for Indigenous students. And we do collaborate a lot of the time on different events, so keep an eye out for that. This one's from Tiana, one of our Yell House EDII coordinators. So she said that since launching the website at the peak of the pandemic to returning to campus and transitioning to a bigger space, it's a joy to see the students reflected in all aspects of the Yellow House, from the design of the booklet to the artwork in the new Rideau space. Oh, thank you, Tiana. And all of the incredible programming. The level of student engagement is what I dreamt of when starting my role in 2020, and it brings me so much joy every day to see it come to life. Oh, I'm so glad. Tiana is such a lovely person. Speaking of spaces, one student wrote that the queer events have been so much fun. It's really nice going into a space. It's really nice to go in knowing it's a space where I don't have to worry about whether or not people will get my pronouns right and see me for who I am. And they've really been a nice way to find community on campus. I love that. We're so glad. That's really what the Yellow House is about, being able to find joy and community. Oh, I like this next one. One student said that my girlfriend brings me joy on Queen's campus. Yeah. For many people, a lot of people find their spouses at universities, so I'm very glad that people can find joy in their partners that they find on campus. I love that. Neza, our EDII programming assistant, said that I have too many positive memories at the Yellow House, but some of my favorite memories include setting up our Rideau location. Sitting on the ground and painting for hours made me feel closer to my coworkers, and I was more invested in the house since I was working on something I was so passionate about, the mural. I love that. Oh, Neza. If you haven't already seen the mural Neza's talking about, it's this one I designed for the movie screening area of our Rideau location, just as a nod to our connection to the original Yellow House. We're currently occupying both locations. We haven't lost the other one. But I wanted to bring that feeling of coziness that you get from the actual Yellow House into Yellow House at Rideau. I had such a blast working on it with my coworkers and the volunteer community members, so I definitely agree with Neza that it was a real point of joy for me on campus as well. Okay. Last but not least, I have a student here who said, I found joy in the people I've met and get to continually engage with across a variety of campus spaces. Yes, that's exactly the point of today's talk, Connection and community truly do inspire joy on campus. So as we end this episode, I implore you to think about what brings you joy and how to savor it no matter where you are in life. Just like a roller coaster, the little ups in life give us the momentum to push past the downs. So I just want to say thank you for painting along with me. It's been a joy. And I'll probably have another outro, but I just want to always remind you folks to return your art kits if you've borrowed one, and to check us out on Instagram at QueensU Yellow House to see our upcoming events. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the video. Okay, so the final step to finishing out your painting is adding a little signature. Okay, so now that you're completely done and happy with your painting and it's totally dry, we can do my favorite part, peeling off the tape. If I could get it. Sorry, I'm not used to having long nails. So when you pull, you want to pull on a 45-degree angle, and honestly, I just pick up the tape, have it like this, and literally drag it. You really don't pull it up because it's more likely to rip. You want to pull perpendicular. If you're really having trouble with ripping, you can always use a hairdryer and heat the tape a little bit before you take it off, because that can help. Otherwise, just pull like this. Oh, actually, it's down here. And try to remember the order you put your tape on in, because that can also help if you pull it off in the opposite order. And ta-da! It's finally free. Okay, so here's the finished painting. Thank you all so much for joining me today in painting. Make sure to return your art kit to the Yellow House, and be sure to check us out on our Instagram at QueensU Yellow House. Pardon me. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.